Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to Courageous Conversations. I'm going to sit back a little here. So my name is Casey Carpenter, and I am the CEO and founder of Speak and Own It Communications. And it is our pleasure to welcome you all here today. It is so awesome to see a full room of fabulous ladies and a few awesome gentlemen. Is that right? Yeah. Woo! Yeah. Shout out to the men, really, seriously, because we do what we can accomplish and we need the men to support us. So I'm excited to have the privilege of kicking off this panel. And before we get started, I do have one housekeeping item, and that is you can find our bios in case any of you want to read up a little more about these wonderful ladies. You can find the bios in the program. Or you can use the QR code on any of the signage that you see here today. So now it's my pleasure to introduce who we have here today. I will go last. I would like to first introduce you to Amy. Amy, would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here with my fellow panelists and all of you. My name again is Amy Minkoff. I am the owner and Happy Success Catalyst at Amy Minkoff Coaching. I help visionary leaders, business owners, and professionals take their work and life to the next level for even more success and, yes, even more happiness along the way, especially when you're at a career crossroads and the next steps or how to get there seems elusive. Thank you.
Okay, Sally Jo, let's hear from you.
Fantastic. Hi, everybody. My name is Sally Jo O'Brien, and I live in Teaneck, New Jersey. And I am the founder and CEO of Mercury Leadership and the Director of Executive Coaching at the Human Emergence Group. And my primary work is in helping humans humanize the workplace and build braver spaces. More courageous workplaces is the work that I get jazzed up about. And I'm an executive coach, and I facilitate all of the work of Brene Brown and have been doing that work for about 10 years. So thank you.
Very nice. And let's welcome Deb.
Hey, good day, everyone. Great to be here. I am Deb Visconi. I'm the More importantly, I am here with an amazing, powerful team of professional women that have accompanied here today. I am the president and CEO of Bergen Newbridge Medical Center in Paramus, New Jersey, in Bergen County. Obviously, being the president and CEO of a large medical center, my day is varied, diverse, and very dynamic. I have spent my entire adult life in healthcare. I started my career as a phlebotomist and grew my career up through the laboratory ranks and ended up in administration, and really am living my dream of being able to lead a safety net facility in the state of New Jersey, providing essential health care for the communities that we serve. It's a privilege to be here with you all today. I can't believe how many of you are here to listen to us speak, and it's even more a privilege to be here with my esteemed panelists, so thank you all.
Awesome. And I did promise I'd tell you a little about me. So again, Casey Carpenter, CEO and founder of Speak and Own It Communications. This is a business that was birthed during the pandemic. So if anybody ever tells you you can't do something, of course we don't believe them. What I do and what I'm passionate about is working with women business leaders just like you on your presence, your communication, and your empathy, so that when we show up at work, we can really communicate with each other, we understand where we're coming from, and we have really happier and much more productive workplaces and workspaces. So that's what I like to do. Stop by my table and take my quiz. All right, so let's kick off this courageous communications thing. And Deb, I'm going to toss this first question to you to weigh in, and then of course, I'll invite everyone else to weigh in. But here's the thing. I mean, when we think about a courageous conversation, I mean, what really is that? What are we saying? Because most people don't walk up to you and say, hey, Casey, could I have a courageous conversation with you right now? Right? It doesn't sound like that. It comes packaged as something else. So, Deb, in your career, when you've heard this, what do people usually say? How does it come framed as?
Well, it's not just the way it comes from. You really hit it on the head right away when you said, what is a courageous conversation? And it means different things to different people. And for me, as I walk the halls of our medical center, it could come in the middle of walking down a hallway and somebody from your engineering department says, "Oh, Miss Debbie, can I talk to you for a minute?" And you know that it's going to be something, he has the courage to stop the CEO in the hall and say, "Can I talk to you for a minute?" So you kind of already know that something's coming, that it's going to be uncomfortable for him, awkward, but he had the courage to reach you. Other times it comes in the way of somebody just reaching out and saying, "Can I have a private conversation? Do you have a few minutes? Can I get time on your calendar?" Those are the more formal ways it comes to you. But you generally have a sense that, especially when somebody is, lower in the organization, that what they're going to ask you is going to be uncomfortable, awkward. But you open the door to people. You make them feel comfortable, that it's okay to approach you, to have the conversation. You make that eye contact. And I have an open door policy, so we give them the ability to speak and to say, what's on their mind and really have that respectful talk. But it comes to me in many, many different ways, and it really is about the individual and what they believe is something important and courageous.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that open door is so important, I think, also in just getting people to relax when there's something heavy on their minds. So, Amy, what about you? Where does this show up in your work?
Well, I would say it shows up when I'm coaching individual clients in nearly all of my sessions. And what I wanted to add to what Deb had to say is some of the typical things that come up. She started with two of them, which is it's typically a conversation that brings up discomfort for the person who's initiating it. It might feel awkward and risky to have, but also risky not to have it. And my view is if you look towards being thoughtful and mindful and do it in service of some greater good, and the three things that come to mind that make people uncomfortable are when there's conflict or potential conflict, when there's some kind of constructive criticism or negative feedback, and then the third category is perhaps an unprecedented ask that you want to make or an unpopular decision that you want to share.
Mm-hmm. I probably had all of those in my career. My goodness. Okay, so Sally Jo, how about you?
Yeah, this is what my work is every day. Courageous, uncomfortable conversations and helping people navigate them. And to add to what Deb and Amy said, that I think one of the most important things is to acknowledge for yourself that it's a vulnerable place to be in this situation, this dialogue, and to help the person sitting across from you know that they're being vulnerable. And so that's a lot of it level sets, it evens the playing field, and people understand that you're having some empathy too for their discomfort, and also acknowledging that this might get a little funky, this might get a little difficult, but we're in this together, and that I think that it creates a connection versus sitting across the table. Another thing too, and this as I was thinking about it, sometimes sitting next to someone, shoulder to shoulder, versus across a table can lessen, just by the physical geography of that, can lessen the anxiety of it. Being behind a desk versus come sit over here if you have that opportunity. So, yeah.
Yeah, now each of you used some really nice words that leads to the next question I have. I heard risk. I heard being vulnerable. I heard might get a little funky, right? So here's the thing. Sometimes people are really hesitant to come to us when they're feeling vulnerable or that there's a lot at stake. So what have you found, each of you, gets in the way of people having these courageous conversations, And why don't we start with you, Sally Jo?
The number one thing that gets in the way, in my experience, is judgment. Judging yourself, like I'm worried I'm not going to be able to, navigate this. I'm not going to have the right words, etc. Or worrying that you're going to be judged by whoever you need to have the conversation with. And the other thing is, it's not really like fear. What Brene Brown would say, and you'll hear me talk a little bit about her during this conversation, is it's armor. It's being armored up to protect ourselves from the fallout of a potential fallout of a vulnerable conversation. So those are two of the big things that get in the way.
Mm-hmm. Deb, how about you?
I would say fear would be the top of the list, but when you think about it, when you look at yourselves in the mirror and you say, what are you afraid of by having this conversation? So you're afraid of rejection. You're afraid that the person you're having the conversation with is not going to be accepting of what you're looking for. You're afraid of hearing the word no. No, you're not going to get the promotion. No, you're not going to get, the next best job, or, no, I don't like your idea. I think that, as humans, that gets in the way a lot, that fear of rejection and hearing what you don't want to hear, and that putting yourself in that vulnerable position to go to someone and have a courageous conversation that will be uncomfortable. So I think there's vulnerability and I think there's fear.
Yeah. How do you think we can overcome these barriers when somebody's really scared and that they have something heavy on their mind? I heard open door policy. What are some of the other things that you're doing? Go for it.
Yeah, I'd like to build on the concept of vulnerability. So whether you're the one who wants to approach someone to have the courageous conversation or you are being approached, my invitation to you is to have the courage to be vulnerable. So what I mean by that, let's say you're being approached. You can offer a feeling that you're experiencing so that person realizes you're human also, or you can say, oh, I can see you may feel X. I can understand. I feel Y. Go ahead with, tell me what's on your mind. So that's a little bit about how you can approach it if someone's coming to you. And then also, if you're going to somebody, being vulnerable, I think, can diffuse some of the fears. People are probably impressed that you're stepping up for yourself. We think maybe we're not good enough and that people will judge us. But what if you reframe it as, wow, I'm being vulnerable enough to come forward, and this person's actually going to be impressed rather than judging me.
Because vulnerability is courage. You can't get to courage without vulnerability. And, the tagline to that is embrace the suck. And that's a military expression. Right?
When you express the vulnerability, it makes the other person feel safer instead of afraid.
I would add to what Amy and Sally said is establishing trust. That is really a very powerful relationship builder, and really making sure that your staff, your colleagues, your friends know that they can trust you. And part of that is showing your vulnerability. Part of that is showing your truth. But it's also about establishing that trusting relationship. Again, I started by talking about the example in the hallway of the engineering maintenance worker that approached me. He would never have approached me if he didn't have trust in the fact that I would listen to him in a non-judgmental way. And he has the trust that as a leader, I say what I mean and I mean what I say. And part of, really getting past some of these barriers to have these conversations is that building of trust.
Yeah, that's super powerful. And you can't do it without trust. You can't do it without vulnerability. So let's talk strategy for a minute here. So what do you think, what strategies would you recommend personally for leaders when they have to initiate these difficult conversations? especially if you're scared to have the conversation. So what can you do as a leader? Go for it.
My favorite one that saves my bacon every time is with my family and with colleagues is the story I'm making up is. So I see that you're late on Mondays, and the story I'm making up is, that you don't want to come to work or whatever. And then you can find out, so I'm curious what's happening, or some version of that. But the story I'm making up helps me own that I have some energy on it and gives the other person a chance to say, no, it's not that at all. It's blah, blah, blah. We haven't figured out childcare on Mondays yet. Oh, okay, we need you to figure that out. And I hear, thanks for letting me know, that kind of thing.
Either of you.
Yeah, so I'm familiar with some of the steps you're sharing with the group, and to add to it, the idea of giving your own perspective, the story about it in your mind. In support of that, identifying the difference between the facts and your perspective and sharing both. When this happens, these are the facts, and here's the story I tell about it. And if you have an ask, there are two things about that. One, you can say, I'm having this conversation with you because I care about our relationship, and if it's professional, and the work we do in the organization or our mission. And then when it comes to the ask, you can also share with the person how you see it, that it matters to them and what's in it for them, that your ask is not only about you, but that there's some mutually beneficial outcome that can be derived from this conversation, and that it's not about just you, but both of you.
I would suggest, certainly some things that have worked for me was, and it's really just human nature to want to jump into a awkward conversation because you're going to want to get it over with. But you want to think about the other individual and how they're going to respond to it. So just recently, within the last 48 hours, I had to have, as I'm reflecting now, what I thought was a courageous conversation on my part. I was recruiting for a senior executive leader on my team, and there was a couple of in-house candidates that really wanted the job and applied for it, and I wasn't going to give it to them because they just weren't ready for it. I felt very. It was really important that I had the personal conversation with them as their CEO. I didn't want to delegate it to anybody else, and so I requested a meeting with them. Each of them, there's two of them, each of them separately, of course. And these guys are generally like golf shirts and khaki kind of guys, soft shoes. So he's waiting to see me, and he's got a tie on and a suit, and I'm like, oh my God, this is going to be horrible. And I was actually scared. To go and speak with him. But I started off in a different way. We sat down and we started talking about the department and the things he's done and how much he's grown and how proud I am of the work he's done. And then I segued into, really am appreciative that you are so interested in staying with our organization, that you have applied for the job, but, we're going to go in a different direction. And we just sort of softened the conversation a little bit. And in some ways, he was actually kind of relieved and said, oh, thank you for telling me. But he was so grateful that I took the time. Again, it's that relationship, that trust, that eye contact. But I have to tell you, I had like butterflies in my stomach when I saw him standing there with his suit and tie. I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be hard. But those are courageous conversations. I mean, they go all ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It doesn't have to be something terrible or cataclysmic. It could be emotional. You don't want to hurt someone's feelings. It can just be a tough conversation. How about you, Sally Jo? Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, as you're saying it, I was thinking it can be even a conversation like I'm leaving the organization, I'm going to do a job, or I'm leaving the team. How to break that news to people. It felt like what you did with your employee was so respectful. So it's respecting their experience of the workplace and the relationship.
Cool.
So not a whole lot to add to it, but it's just important to be talking about this, I believe.
Yeah, absolutely.
For sure. And two thoughts came to mind, pretty fundamental, but it bears mentioning, I feel, because I've noticed this in some of my own conversations recently, the power of the empathetic listening. So you hear somebody say something, you say, so what I think I just heard you tell me is, and do I have that right? Was there anything else? Because when I get asked, was there anything else, I really feel like I'm being heard. And that can add to the trust that we're talking about building. And then the second topic that is useful if you're concerned about how to engage is to come to the conversation with a spirit of curiosity, a willingness to listen and to ask a question. And if you're not sure what to say next, tell me a little more about that.
So what I'm hearing is, I love what I just heard, and I really like the story that I'm making up about this is because I feel that I'm also taking some responsibility in this conversation, and I'm not blaming anyone. So I'm just saying, hey, this is how I see it. Let's please talk about this. Tell me if I've got this right. I love the empathetic listening. And did I get that right? Here's what I heard you say, paraphrasing. Now, are these things always easy to do in the heat of the moment? They're not, are they?
Nope.
So what are besides being really great coaches, which you all are, how do you remember to do these things, this paraphrasing and listening? And frankly, it also sounds like you're centered and calm. And that's not easy. So how do you do it? I mean, I'm wildly curious, and this was not a question that was on here, but just sparked by what I was hearing. How do you do it?
I take a deep breath.
It is.
And I center on the person sitting next to me or across from me or wherever the other individual is. I really focus on making that eye contact, and that is so powerful. We hear about eye contact and how important it is, but it really is a very powerful way to connect with someone. And you can, and to me, so deep breath, eye contact, and really putting yourself in the moment, really just embracing the moment and trying to get to what the conversation needs to be, but really just focusing on the other individual and breathing in and just trying to center yourself.
Yeah, there's power in the breath. It really does. It actually physiologically shifts you from fight or flight to rest, digest, and create. There's science behind that. It's so true, and nobody can see it. You can do it in any moment. I did it before we started here. I've done it in presentations. And being honest in the moment, if you get stuck, you can say, oh, I'm not really sure what to say right now. You can almost narrate a little bit what's happening for yourself. And I think that it makes everyone else feel a little more comfortable and realizing that we're all just basically people trying to do our work in the world and be with the people we love and care about.
Did you have anything you wanted to add to that?
There's a practice of giving yourself permission, like we call them permission slips in some of my work, where it's permission to be uncomfortable, like knowing that, and permission to take 5 minutes and go hide in the bathroom for a second, take a deep breath. Just very kind of simple, practical things like that. And the other thing that came to mind when Deb was speaking is I do my best to try to be in a place of service. So if I'm in service to you, I'm not focusing on my discomfort. I'm trying my best to be present and in service to what's happening. And it's practice. It's practice, So
one build on the service idea, and now I'm having a freeze moment. Service. Oh, yes, we're talking about discomfort, and one of the benefits to think about having an uncomfortable moment for the sake of growth, that there's something on the other side of that discomfort that has a real benefit and value to yourself and the other person. I love that spirit of service. To take, it's not about you, make it about others, and then the pressure comes off a bit.
That's really good, y'all. So 20 years ago in corporate America, I was a vice president of sales, and I had one person on my team that it was like a rock in my shoe every single day. Really challenging behaviors. She was good at her work, and the organization knew that she had challenging behaviors. And the way they would describe it was she breaks a lot of glass, but she gets the job done. And I'm thinking, okay, mild-mannered me, how do I get to be so lucky to have this person reporting to me? Because it really was a challenge. And something had happened, I don't remember what, but there was just a vibe where I really felt, I gotta talk to her. I can't let this go. I've got to clear the air. We got to get on the same page. It was almost for me like wearing an uncomfortable jacket. Like I could just feel it. So the question I have for you all is that having these conversations can be risky, right? But what are the consequences of not having a courageous conversation?
Well, that's a lot riskier.
Yeah. How so?
Well, I mean, look, if you don't open the door to people in your organization or, to your friends in your personal life and your family, you don't know what they're really thinking or feeling and what behaviors will manifest from you not having the conversation. If you're working in an organization, people may leave, right? Because they don't feel they have the confidence to trust the ability to come and reach out and have conversations with their team members or their leaders, and they may get frustrated and want to leave the organization. And you don't want to lose talent. So I think that is a big risk of not having those conversations. And, the perception of what your organization, the culture is, that you don't have an open door, that you don't engage with your team members. So to me, it's really more risky not to have the conversations.
And adding to that, I think not acknowledging the power imbalance that happens where people that really could contribute a lot because they're in different positions that you may not be in if you're in a leadership position, that can really help with innovation, safety, so many things. If they are given the opportunity to speak up without it being without unsafe or too risky for them personally. So there was an example I was working with a team of executives at a manufacturing company, and they were having a lot of safety issues. And once they started to listen to their to the people that at lower levels that were in the foundry and on the floor, they eliminated a problem. But it was because they were finally, came to Jesus and started to listen to what was being suggested to them. So it was good and important.
What would you like to add to that, Amy?
I think all of these really powerful ideas about building trust and facilitating innovation, there's this idea of really empowering individuals at all levels, and that everyone's point of power comes from within. And by modeling these kinds of conversations in an organization, you're going to foster trust, creativity, and a culture that empowers everyone to deliver on the organization's mission. And that along the way, everyone can feel pretty good doing it.
Very powerful. So what I heard is that it can help innovation, safety. It's helpful to listen to the people doing the work, right? Yes. It's like it empowers individuals because they see how the conversations get modeled. I'm really curious, what does it do for you? When you know that it's risky and you have one of these conversations, you do it anyway. What's it do for you?
I think it helps me grow. I think it helps me grow. I think it helps me engage with people better. I think it continues to foster that inclusive environment that we're trying to build by making sure we hear all the voices at all levels of the organization. So personally, I think it helps me grow, and I think it helps our organizations grow.
Absolutely. I will tell you, with that one employee, at having this discussion, and I said to her, yeah, I really feel that we need to clear the air, and what would happen if we didn't? She said, well, then it's like this big thing in the middle of the floor that you keep stepping over. And I said, exactly. So here's the crazy thing. By the end of this meeting, we were crying and holding each other. I wish I could say that moment lasted forever, but at that time,
Baby steps.
at that time, yeah, we really did see each other and meet each other. So she got a little bit of where I was coming from, and me her. So, all right, so let's take a different tack on this, because we're talking a lot about conversations that we're planning for. We know that we have to have, except Deb didn't expect the gentleman to show up in a suit. That was a curveball. But pretty much we've been talking about these instances where we kind of know that we've got to have a meeting with someone. But what about the other type? The type that just come up out of nowhere, seemingly, or just out of the blue. So what signals do you get that you're about to enter into one of these conversations? Because again, they don't say, okay, see, we're about to have one of those courageous conversations. It doesn't show up like that. So how do you plan when you then are in that moment and it's a little bit of a surprise?
I could jump in on this. I'm thinking about a situation when I worked in a corporation on the marketing side, and there were scientists I had to deal with. And I had a guy who reminds me of the person on your team. It was my job to ask him to make a proposal for a clinical plan with a certain budget in mind, and I needed it, in 2 days. He needed 2 weeks. His face turned red. My boss isn't letting me work on anything else right now. You can get the idea. I felt like we were 180 degrees apart. And I didn't see it coming. I just thought I would go ask for it, and he would do it. And so what I want to say about handling these situations on the fly is, if you make it a practice, which I think you alluded to, and you have a style and approach to this, when you get caught off guard, you already have a practice of saying, oh, well, what's going on for you? Are you, you have other deadlines. What's your experience? Tell me more about that. I'm feeling pressured. What are you feeling? So you kind of use the things you already know to do, but you can kind of grab them on the fly because you've been doing it. And so I did some of those things with this person. And like your experience, after I kind of broke down the barrier, gave him a chance to say what was going on for him, I shared a little bit about me. 2 days later, he came back and said, here it is, with a smile. What else do you need, Amy?
Wow. I love that story.
That is a great story.
Yeah. So having a framework already in mind is what I'm hearing you say, and that worked for you because in that moment of stress, you were able to just pull back on what you knew.
Sure. And you don't have to be perfect at it. You just have to have the tools, and, if you're getting a little better each time, we're all works in progress.
Yes, yes.
And I think, too, it's okay to say, well, this caught me off guard for a second. If you see my face, I notice I'm feeling a little defensive right now, and I'm super curious. And then, get back over there to the other person. Like, have a little honesty about what's going on. Yeah. That's important too, without, too much attitude, right?
I think that all collects what we've been talking about, is having that authentic relationship, that trust, that ability to be vulnerable and say what's the truth. I mean, people respond to the truth, and whether you're uncomfortable because you weren't expecting that conversation. I'll tell a really quick story that happened to me early in my career. I know we only have 5 minutes left of our talk, but so I aggressive career builder that I am, and I was just about to get promoted into a new job. The person that was in the job was leaving the organization, but not on her own will. So our boss said to me, oh, she's leaving. you can move into her office on Friday. So, of course, I wasn't going to waste any time. I had my boxes packed, and I ran down the stairs Friday morning, and I ran into the office, and there she was. What are you doing here? And I was like, well, I was just getting ready to move into your office. What I didn't do was blame my boss and say, well, he told me you were leaving, and I'm just, I really owned it. And I said, wow, I'm really sorry that, and I was genuinely sorry. I mean, I said, I'm really sorry that this happened. I thought that the office would be vacant today, and I was getting ready to just settle in before Monday came around. I think, I'm not a believer in saying I'm sorry unless you mean it. We use that very, very often. People say I'm sorry so loosely, and it's one of my pet peeves is really genuinely mean it when you say you're sorry. And so I really was sorry because I felt terrible, because I put myself in her shoes. What if that was me that was leaving the organization not on my own will, and then here comes my career aggressive successor with her little box of stuff. I mean, it was terrible. It was a terrible moment in time, and I grew from that and really just put myself in her space and had that awkward conversation, water a plant and said good luck.
All right, so in the waning minutes that we have, I think we also want to make sure that you leave here with some tools, strategies, tips, and techniques. So we've heard a few today already, right? Active listening, being empathetic, reflecting back what you hear. So my awesome panelists, is there anything we would want to add if we're thinking about helping our audience build a toolkit that they can take with them?
I would say don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. We're all humans. We all feel the same way about conversations, about situations. Take the bull by the horns. Don't be afraid to have the conversations, initiate the conversations, and receive the conversations.
I need words. That's where I have always leaned into a lot of people that I've learned from, mentors. And so I made a list of 15 ways to begin a brave conversation, and I have a bunch of them here, and if there aren't enough, I'll email it to you or whatever. But it's a lot about having some here. I notice that I'm feeling a bit defensive, yet I'm curious about your experience when someone tells you that they didn't like the movie that you saw or whatever. Having phrases that help, that you can anchor into. So that's what I do, and so I read a lot about that and try to keep them on my radar.
What I would like to leave the group with, and to build on what Deb said, if you have the fear and you're not sure how to get rid of it, have the conversation even afraid. That's called being courageous, doing it anyway. And here's something. What's one courageous conversation that you could have in the next 7 days that will make your or someone else's life better? And put it in your calendar and go have that conversation.
Wow.
Woo!
Beer here.
That's it. Call to end. So, my awesome audience, what questions do you have for us? Please. Would you like to stand and tell us your name, please? Hi, Anita.
I'd just like to thank Deb, first of all, for sharing the bad experience. I guess the second thing would be, what comes to mind is sometimes having done everything right or everything that you've suggested, that you're never going to have 100% success. That sometimes that person on the other end, if you're the one that has to initiate the conversation, just won't get it. Comes to mind when I just had to fire the president of an organization when I was the board chair, that, a relationship was destroyed, and I feel like I'd done everything right, and support from everyone on the board, said, you're the only one that can have this conversation. We'll feel like we're ganging up on him if it's all three of us. Women that were on the NomGov committee that was supposed to have the conversation, but just a recognition that sometimes you still won't have 100% success on the other end on occasion.
I'm curious as to how you're defining success. Is that where you were going?
Something like that.
I had success for the organization because we got rid of a real problem in the organization. But that person on the other end certainly still to this day, 3 years later, feels like got sandbagged, doesn't think that individual did anything, was doing the right set of things, no matter what.
So that everything you said has truth in it. And a thought for everyone, if you experience something like that, is we don't control outcomes or other people. We have 100% dominion over the experience with that outcome and how we can grow from it.
Oh, yes. There's a mic coming, so we can all hear you.
Good afternoon. My name is Ferlanda Nixon, and I'm with the African American Chamber of Commerce of New Jersey. So my question is more about when you're dealing with individuals who you suspect are adults on the spectrum, and everybody in the room suspects the same thing, but no one in the room is trained to deal with that. And so the question I always get is, because what happens is we just kind of let that person do whatever they want to do, however they want to do it, and then keep it moving. But then the question I always get is, how long do we let that happen? Because it creates a lot of emotional stress and people start to feel like they're being bullied. So I just wanted to know what's your advice?
Anybody have any? And maybe we open this up to the entire room. Maybe someone has experience. I see a couple of hands in the back there. So yes, the lady here with the glasses and the lovely plaid jacket. Would you like to? Yes, you.
Let's see.
Tell us your name and would you like to lend some advice for that one? Thank you.
My name is Liza Gundel, and I work for the Family Resource Network, which is a network of nonprofit organizations, including Autism Family Services, Epilepsy Services, and Caregivers of New Jersey. So I would say if that employee is not performing appropriately, then you are obligated for their benefit and yours to have that conversation with them. And if they are on the spectrum, everybody's different and it's a big, broad spectrum. So there's not one size fits all, but I think you should have an honest conversation. Make sure you consult with HR about how that conversation goes to make sure that it's appropriately handled. But I think that that not only should you, but you have the obligation to have that conversation for the employee and for you. And if they're not able to perform the job functions, then it's not a right job match for them and for you, and that you should just be open and honest with them.
And there was another hand. Did you have anything to add to what Liza said?
I do. My name's Deborah Newman. I'm with Consumer Product Testing Company, and we have quite a varied group of employees that work in our company. And I have a sign in my office that says, it's a riff on a Bruce Kasanoff quote that says, honesty without compassion is brutality. So we need to be honest with all of our employees. And one thing that I didn't hear you guys say, but I know you probably innately know, is that all of these are teaching moments. So every time that someone is in my office because they have a problem with something, it is a teaching moment because that person now goes out and interacts with other employees. And so what I'm trying to do is teach them that even though they have to be honest about whatever issue is coming up, and a lot of those are courageous type conversations that they're going to have, that they need to be honest, but they also need to be compassionate. They don't know where that person is in their mind that day. They don't know what other stressors they have, all of these. So if you're going to have these courageous conversations, I guess my real point here is that each time that you have one of these, you are teaching someone else to be courageous as well. And I think that that's really important in any community or company or, whatever group you're associated with. So,
Thank you.
Thank you for that input. Could I add something, Casey, real quick? I am grateful for the input regarding questions about people on the spectrum. And I'm not an expert in this area, but I have encountered people in my life who have different neurodivergent tendencies and things like that. And there's a lot many of us don't know. So if you don't have all the answers, there might be people in your HR department or people outside the organization. I do recommend that you ask for help on how to work effectively with people like this and to be compassionate and supportive, whether the person can contribute in their job or not. I believe that everyone can contribute somewhere in the right place, and there's a lot for us to learn about how different people think and learn and relate to the world.
Hi, Courtney Villani Bus, third generation owner of our family business, 104 years in business. So I grew up in the family business, and courageous conversations were something that I had to learn rather roughly through experience. And a lot of times we didn't know where to draw the line in the sand because we called it our Villani Bus family, our work family, and you spend so much time with the people that we work with. And we get so close that sometimes we don't know how to have those courageous conversations, and we do let things slip or slide, and we work around, because as women especially, we are so good at working around problems. And an ex-boyfriend of mine gave me very succinctly, he said, you know, if you bring muffins to work, they're going to eat them and say they're great because you're the boss. Right? You may be friends as well, but also it's a working relationship first. So sometimes we have to step back to see things a little bit more clearly. And the true relationships will always continue in the good times and the bad times. But sometimes we just need to give ourselves some time to respect our position.
I think what I hear you saying is that it's okay to have boundaries and to create them, especially when there's a family business. And there might be times you cross them, but you could be mindful and purposeful about it.
I had a sales rep who I got really close to, and sometimes things would happen, and I would have to say to her, okay, I'm taking off my friend hat right now, and I'm putting on my boss hat. When this happened, here was the effect. And it was always cool because I maintained my respect for the relationship and for her, and it had to be done. And boy, was I uncomfortable. I see you have your hand up there. Yes, the rest. Yeah.
When you're doing, I'm sorry, Chelsea.
Another Chelsea.
Thank you. When you're speaking to the masses, and you're lobbying and you're changing policy, because I do a lot of that, but I'm young and I'm a minority on 2 levels. I need advice from women of wisdom. How do I deal with that when my male counterparts are looking at me a certain way? And when we're talking to the masses and we're trying to shift their mindsets? Because a lot of times the people I talk to, especially when I'm dealing with different organizations in the cities and municipalities, they're separated. And I try to draw people together in unification and collaboration. So do you have any advice for me when I'm speaking the oracles of collaboration and being mission-minded? Is there any advice? Because I'm like having butterflies every time I have to go speak. So that's my question.
Communication, I would suggest, is super important in this regard when you're trying to change a culture or change policy. You know, no one likes change. Even in the best of circumstances, everybody likes things the way they were. Even if people say we embrace change, they really don't. So I think it's true. Yeah, it really is true. You just know, right? That's how humans are. So, communication ahead of time, even sending written, emails or things about what you want to bring up at your meeting when you share your vision, confidence, respect, relationship building. So even who's going to be in your audience. So maybe start to talk to people ahead of time at the meeting and get their feel. Offline. Hey, listen, I'm going to talk about changing this policy. This is what I'm thinking about doing. How does this feel to you? How do you feel about this? And that also gives you an opportunity to engage your audience early on, because you're going to them and ahead of time and you're trusting them, right? You're building that trust, saying, I want your opinion before I talk to everyone else about this. This is what I'm thinking. So just some ideas of ways that you can kind of embrace that position. You know, when I took over the organization I'm at right now, I had to change the culture of 2,200 people, and it was really, I had to stand at a town forum in front of all these employees and start to talk to them about why I was different than the previous leadership. You know, and a lot of it was about being true to my word, and letting them see that I wasn't empty words. What I said, I meant. And things like that, you know, and then maybe even, I don't know how your organization's structured, but maybe even having smaller groups. You know, I do something called Dine with Debbie, right? I open up a door once a month, and employees come and they sit with me. I have no agenda. They just come to talk to me about how we can make Bergen-Newbridge Medical Center a better place to work. And anybody can come on their own time and spend time talking to me in small groups, so it's not a big mass. So just some things that I found helpful through my career.
And Chelsea, I wanted to say, and this applies to all of us, having courageous conversations start with knowing your values and anchoring into those values so that you can really actually have the grounded confidence you need to stand up in that, you know, that arena, so to speak, and be able to lean into that. So if it's important to get clear on what's important to you so that, you know, who we are is how we lead, right? So being clear on leaning into the values that you know, center you and that you're committed to.
Everyone had really relevant points. I also want to say you were articulate and eloquent when you got up to ask your question, and know that about yourself and believe that. And if you frame what you're presenting with context, you tell a story about it, even if it's personal, and express something about your vision of the world when this policy is implemented, it might likely touch the people in the room. And these other folks had excellent suggestions as well. So if you put it all together, you'll do a great job.
I have one more. And this was something that my brother said to me when I first went into sales. And I was so scared, meeting with these senior level executives. And I was a kid carrying a briefcase, stumbling in my high heels. He said to me, "Little sis, you have a right to be there. So know that. You have a right to be there. Cultivate those allies, stand tall, and you'll have them eating out of your hand, I guarantee."
Yeah.
Look at this, you can, right?
Done.
We're done.
Done.
This is it. Oh, well, we're done, y'all. This is
We're done.
Thank you so much for being.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
So much.